Today's episode is called Siri, Meaning, and the Death of the Inner I, a metaphysical journey in the age of externalism. This is a story about a machine that speaks, and a human who thanks it. But more than that, it's a story about how we got here, to a world where devices answer questions, where prediction replaces introspection, and where meaning no longer seems to live in the soul, but somewhere in the interface. So before we dive into the theory, let's start with a scene. Quiet, domestic, oddly philosophical. It begins with rain. And a question. It was a wet and quietly humming morning, the kind that lends itself to reflection and the clicking of radiators. I rose groggily to a dim room and, in lieu of conversation or company, addressed the machine on my mantle. "What is the weather today?" I asked it, with the air of one expecting something other than silence. And the machine, smooth, glinting, altogether too confident for its small stature, replied with a precise summary of the meteorological conditions. Cool air, light drizzle, a suggestion of sun by late afternoon. I, being a creature of habit and vague decency, said, "Thank you." It said nothing. Not out of malice. Machines do not resent us. Not out of shyness. They do not blush. It simply did not respond. And for a moment I stood there, teacup in hand, feeling a faint absurdity settle over me like dust. Why had I thanked it? Had I mistaken silence for presence? Had I, in my early hour fog, attributed understanding where there was only programming? Or was there something more subtle at play? Some silent contract we now uphold with our machines? They listen, they answer, they anticipate, they do everything, in fact, but mean. And yet, we ask, we thank, we build our days around their responses. The question, dear reader, is not whether these devices understand us. It is whether we have begun to understand them, not as minds, but as strange mirrors of our own epistemic instincts. For if they do not mean anything, why do we speak to them as though they might? Are we witnessing a new kind of meaning? One that isn't born from thought, but from prediction? Can something that never had a single belief help shape what we believe? Or are these systems just glorified echo chambers, sophisticated parrots with server racks? Let us consider, briefly but with due amusement, the plight of our digital oracles. First, Ruth Millikan informs us, persuasively, that meaning is born not in the heavens but in the pressures of biology. Words, like wings, evolve because they do something useful, and their significance lies in this success. But now, I pose a small difficulty. When my assistant chirps, "Take an umbrella," I obey, but what, precisely, was the evolutionary ordeal that endowed this chirping with authority? In what primordial swamp did Siri learn meteorology? Selfhood. Here enters the twist. Perhaps its lineage is not zoological, but sociological. Its meaning arises not from the furnace of natural selection, but from the slow collective choreography of human use. In short, we have become its Darwin. Now we arrive at a rather startling proposition. Startling, that is, if one still clings to the quaint belief that only minds possess meaning. What if normativity, what makes a claim right, not merely useful, can be outsourced? Not to a conscious machine, but to a network of interactions where humans embed norms directly into the system's environment. Meaning, then, isn't something sealed inside the machine, like a ghost in a motherboard. It's in the surroundings, in the patterns of feedback, in social responses, in our collective habits of reward and correction. When a digital assistant says, "Take an umbrella," it doesn't understand you. But you, and millions like you, behave as if it does. You reinforce, adjust, respond, until its behavior mimics understanding. Now here's the crucial bit. Take away the environment. Strip the feedback loops, the normative scaffolding, the communal practices of evaluation, and the meaning evaporates. What's left is a mannequin repeating phrases in a dead theater. The voice lingers, but the reason it meant anything is already gone. And this, perhaps, is what metaphysics has quietly become. Not the grand unveiling of a self-conscious philosophical order, but the management of normativity through technical systems. Our networks, not our introspection, have become the new custodians of truth. The old trust in the philosopher's inner gaze has been replaced by trust in instruments, algorithms, prompts, data streams, digital assistants. We no longer ask what is being. We ask, is the system working? And if it is, we call it knowledge. And yet, let us be fair, this outsourcing of normativity isn't entirely new. In the past, meaning, truth, and justification were also matters of trust. Only then, it was trust placed inwardly. The philosopher gazed into the depths of consciousness and declared, "Here, within, I find the grounds for meaning." Descartes called it clarity and distinctness. Husserl called it intentionality. Even Kant, ever cautious, believed that reason could legislate its own limits. It was a trust in introspection, in the soul's capacity to bear witness to its own meanings. But now, that solitary trust has been restructured. The burden has shifted outward. Meaning is no longer secured by the philosopher's internal tribunal, but by a web of external confirmations, statistical regularities, and iterative refinements. We have traded the inward gaze for the interface. Where we once believed that truth emerged from inner illumination, we now believe it emerges from coordination. Not, I think, therefore I am, but it sinks, therefore it works. So perhaps the question is no longer what meaning is, but where it happens, and whether we are still its authors or merely its curators. So maybe the real question isn't, does your smart assistant have meaning? Or maybe it's this: what kind of normativity are we projecting, maintaining, and entrusting to these systems? Because meaning used to be something we discovered by turning inward. A matter of self-trust, of philosophical reflection, of the solitary mind anchoring the world in thought. Now, it emerges from networks, feedback loops, and shared protocols. Not as something known, but as something performed. And when our tools begin to talk back, the boundary between user, thinker, and system begins to dissolve. In that dissolution, something else takes shape. A new kind of meaning, born not from introspection but from interaction. Not guaranteed by reason but scaffolded by coordination. We used to believe that understanding lived in the soul. Now we might just be building it into the world.